Welcome to Promotion Commotion, the truth behind promotions in big tech. So let me go to the next slide here, talk a little bit about jam sessions. Jam session is an acronym for the job acquisition method. And we at Kadima, company that I've created a couple years back, dig our acronyms, alliterations, and avocados. I just came up with avocados. I do like avocados, and it is a nice alliteration. The premise of these is I'm going to share a few slides here, really just to start off the discussion. Then I'll share some stories from the war room of my experiences. I'll share a little bit about some of my experience in the past and the reference points that I come with. It's an open forum for you to ask any questions you have for me. And in the Q&A, I believe there's an opportunity for you to leave a question anonymously or list your name. Feel free to do whatever you want. If you list your name, I might refer to your name. If you do anonymously, I definitely will not refer to your name. And rules here, no bullshit. I'm going to tell you as it is. No hypocrisy. You might be used to some hypocrisy and a lot of talk and not a lot of walk at companies that you work at. You will not get that here. And also no politics, not just about the upcoming elections, which everybody should go vote, by the way, but just the office politics, which have been so frustrating for me over the course of my career. And I'm sure most people do not appreciate that. Let's get into here. So there you go. The job acquisition method, our jam sessions, is the perfect blend of jelly, of jam. I think that's some raspberry jam and avocados. And for some reason, someone in this world, I forget what country that is from, has created avocado jam. So just a little play on the words there. Get this party started. Just to give folks a little bit of a background on me that are not familiar with me. Here is my career on a graph. I do like graphs. I do like data visualization. Over the course of my career, I have moved around lots of different companies. I've only got promoted 3 times. However, we are going to talk about promotions here. We are going to talk about how promotions can help elevate and accelerate your career. And most importantly, I will open this up to questions that you have. Put them in the Q&A because that is where I will be referring to once I get through my small number of slides that I'm going to share. So anyway, my career, I worked in banking, worked in baseball, went to business school, worked at American Express. I got promoted 2 times during my career at American Express, from a manager to senior manager to director. At Google, during my nearly 6-year career there, I got promoted 1 time from a level 6 to a level 7. And outside of that, I never got promoted in my career. I did not stick around at companies all that long, so I probably did not have that tenure to get promoted, which we'll talk a little bit about how tenure goes to play in your promotion possibilities. Next slide. So just to give you more background on my career, this is a list of all the companies I've worked at, all the roles I've held. I've held 29 different jobs at 21 different companies. And at each of those, I give it my own personal satisfaction on the job rating and the boss rating. My overall job rating has been a 4.2. My overall boss rating has been a 3.1. Everything on the right side of this screen are companies and organizations that had promotion cycles, that had calibration, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we dig into some of these slides and information. So to level set for folks that are joining here, what I will predominantly be talking about are organizations and companies that have more formal promotion processes. So these are typically companies that are Fortune 500 companies. I'm going to dig deep into the big tech ecosystem because that's what a lot of people are interested in. That's what I have been most immersed in over the last 15 years of my career. And these generally apply to companies with large employee bases where they need to put in rules and regulations and processes for performance management and promotions. So that's what we're generally talking about here. If you work at a small company with 5 or 10 employees, and some of the companies I work with were companies like that, like when I worked in the venture capital company, the BV Capital, and baseball teams, that was a different promotion process where it's actually even much more political, less merit-based. But we'll be talking more about these organizations that are large organizations with promotion processes in place that sometimes they clearly communicate to you. Oftentimes it's a black box and very opaque. So to give you a little guidance of how these organizations look at their talent. So these companies have 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 employees. In the case of Google, 175,000 employees. In the case of Amazon, I think they have 1.5 million employees. These companies calibrate their talent and they look at their talent in sort of a normal distribution. Whereas, and I see questions being answered in here, please keep putting them in there. I will answer all those questions or the ones that I have time for at the end. So please put those questions in the Q&A. Performance, most companies provide you with a performance rating after 6 months or 12 months of working. Not everybody is outstanding. Not everybody needs improvement, or as this slide says, unacceptable. And they all use euphemisms for unacceptable. They might say needs improvement or areas for development or other euphemisms like that. But not everybody is walking on water. Not everybody is eligible for promotion. So people near the right end of the spectrum here, the right end of the chart, are usually the people that are in discussion and put up for promotion. The way that these ratings are determined are usually annual reviews. Sometimes you will do a write-up of your performance and your boss will, or your manager will give you some feedback on that. And then a rating will be spit out of the system that often determines your raise, often determines your bonus, often determines equity allocated to you, and is a big indicator of your ability to get promoted. So these are key inputs. I'm going to talk a little bit about promo cycles and how they differ at organizations. And again, I'm going to wrap this up probably in 20 to 30 minutes and leave most of the time open to questions that you have. It's important to know how often these promo cycles occur. So some companies do them once a year, some do them twice a year, some do them quarterly. It's important to know that, and companies that do them more frequently are often organizations where you can grow your career compensation and your level of scope more quickly. Secondly, it's important to understand if you get promoted based on past work or future work. And what I mean by there is when I worked at American Express, in order for me to go from a senior manager to a director, I needed to apply for roles that were director roles. I had to interview for those roles. I was interviewing for a role that was my future work, that I was worthy of becoming a director. The downside of that is I was competing with people that were lateral as well. So there were directors going to other director roles while I was a senior manager trying to go up to a director. But I needed a role to exist. I needed to apply to that. And I was saying that, hey, I am ready to perform at the next level, in my case, director. There's other philosophies that a lot of the tech companies and consulting companies and other organizations kind of leverage of your promotion is based on your past work. So when you have been deemed to be making a significant contribution as a reward to you, we will bump you up a level. And it's often up a level within the same role and the same team. They just give you either a different title or more money or something like that. And there's usually a lot less friction with that ability to move up within your current role, rather than having to apply for an open role at a higher level. And one data point with me, took me 2 tries at Google to get promoted from a 6 to 7, while it took me 10 attempts at American Express to look for roles to go from a senior manager to director role. And the role that I eventually got as a director, I wasn't even all that excited about. The only reason they gave it to me is because I did the work as a senior manager. And they're like, oh, you can probably do this as a director as well. So from my perspective, it wasn't that interesting. But from their perspective, they could trust that I could do the job. Next, how long must you wait for your next promotion? So different companies have different rules of thumb of, hey, once you get promoted, you need to be in the role for 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, 36 months. They have different rules of thumb. You can skirt through them. They are rules of thumb usually. Sometimes they are hard, fast rules, but all of these factors are important for you to be aware of how your company works. If it's not declared outright, I'm telling you, these rules do exist, and there are people that know how these rules are working, and it is a direct factor of how quickly you will get promoted, how quickly you will increase your compensation, and how quickly you will accelerate your career. So then the last variable that it's important to understand is what percent of people typically get promoted. At Google, at Facebook, they were both pretty similar. About 10% of people got promoted each cycle. So, and the cycles occurred 2 times a year. So what that meant is about 1 in 5 or 20% of people would get promoted in a given year. That was pretty good. That doesn't mean that you should expect to get promoted every 5th year, because 1 out of 5 get promoted every year. But you should expect that if you're doing a good job and you're also understanding the politics and how to influence a process well, that you should be eligible for promotion on a fairly regular basis. So those are all important factors to know. And I'm telling you, all the companies have these either hard, fast rules or at least rules of thumb against all of these variables. And again, these are companies that are large in nature that need to put some sort of process in place to demonstrate that they are appearing to be fair in their process. So in the best case scenario, you are the person in the room where these decisions are occurring, like Hamilton. In the vast majority of these cases, you are not in the room. You are trying to get in that room. You are trying to understand what the hell is going on behind that shut door, and you don't know what's going on. I'm going to share a little bit about what goes on there and how to influence those conversations that you are not going to get in the room with, but that you can significantly influence. So it's important to understand the difference between what you can control and what you can influence. So some things that you can control is what companies you choose to work at. So you are making an active choice to be at your company now. You are making an active choice to stay at your company right now. That is in your control. Your work. You can control kind of the stuff that you impact, your day-to-day work. You can control your relationships, who you decide to build relationships with, who you decide to initiate relationships with, who you decide to invest relationships with. You can also control your knowledge of the system. So right now, you may not have a lot of insight to this system, but you can get access to this information. Either sometimes it's on your internal intranet. Some companies are more transparent with this information, or through those relationships and those conversations, you can speak to leaders who will share some of this information with you. And then the last thing you can control is your loyalty and how loyal you decide to be. So some people want to stay at a company for a long time. They feel the company put a lot of time and attention into them. They feel some sense of loyalty. Totally cool. That's your choice. What I would remind everybody is almost everybody at a US-based company outside of labor unions and most companies globally now are employed at will. So what employed at will means is that company can choose to fire you at any time for any reason outside of discrimination where they'll get sued. And that also means, as employed at will, you can choose to leave at any time for any reason. And frankly, you can discriminate on them. I don't think they'll sue you on that. But you can determine how loyal you choose to be to those companies. So those are things within your control as an individual, as you're focusing on your career development and career trajectory. Next, there's a lot of things that you can influence. So building relationships is on here again. So you can, those relationships that you are having, you can influence those individuals. And I'll talk to you on the next slide about how you can influence those conversations to have people be positively inclined for you, turn colleagues into mentors and turn mentors into advocates. You can also influence advocacy from your manager. So your manager, you can't control that your manager will advocate for you, but there's things that you can influence that you can prepare your manager for so that they can be a more effective influencer for you at these conversations that you are not in. You can also focus on building advocacy from peers of your manager. So in that room where you are not often invited to, not only is your manager talking about you, but peers of your manager are talking about you, and you can influence that conversation that's being had about you in that room where you do not, where you are not invited. And finally, you can influence and build advocacy and mentorship from those above your manager, and that is the most important factor of any. It's also one of the hardest ones to influence, about not just influencing your manager, but your manager's manager, your manager's manager, and all the way up the line. So in terms of influence, Not sure if anyone has read this book by Robert Cialdini. This is a fantastic book. It's really long. So if you don't want to read the whole, first off, I'd recommend you read it. But if you don't want to read the whole thing, you can go to their website. And if you don't want to go to the website, I will tell you the 7 areas of influence that Dr. Cialdini determined are ways that you can influence people and persuade people. One is reciprocity. If you give people something, they are more apt to give you something in return. So if you've ever gotten direct mail piece where they send you mailing labels or they put a quarter in that envelope, they are giving you that gift, not out of generosity, but they know that they will get a better response rate because they are giving you something and you kind of feel like you owe them something. Scarcity. So if you are a rare commodity, if there is limited quantity of you, or if they feel like they are going to lose you to a competing company, you can build scarcity in, which will influence the decision in your favor. Authority. So this is something like when you see commercials with a doctor or an actor wearing a white doctor coat, that is demonstrating authority. So you can demonstrate your authority in your work in terms of your knowledge and insight. Consistency in terms of promotion. If you have a manager that has said that, yes, I am going to promote you in a year, they want to be consistent with what they said. So if you can remind them and refresh their memory of, hey, I know we discussed this, that you would put me up for promotion within a year, there is a desire for people to be consistent with what they've said before. Liking, that's pretty obvious. You want people to like you. People that you like, you will advocate for more, you will support more. Social proof. So are a lot of people singing your praise? If a lot of people are singing your praise, well, yeah, hell, maybe Jen is a great employee because everyone's singing her praise, or maybe Rohit's an awesome employee because everyone's singing his praise. And then unity is kind of a shitty thing, but it actually happens, is almost like a tribalism, or if you have this commonality. So if your leaders, if you happen to be a Black woman and your leader is a Black woman, there might be that unity and that alignment and that tribalism that does not always work out well for people, but there is unity of people. So if you have people that have unification in background, in location, in experience, there is that unity that if you can call upon and you can leverage, has a lot of value for you in influencing those conversations in the room. Next up, who to influence and understanding the org chart. So I pulled this org chart here. This is from the information.com. Great site if folks are interested in tech. It's a good site. This is an org chart of Google. You got Sundar Pichai at the top, the CEO. You see all of his direct reports under there. Then so what I did is I highlighted the org that I used to be in at Google. So I reported into the sales org, which is Philip Schindler. And under Philip, he had 11 direct reports. One of them that I rolled up to was Emmanuel Sackett. And so if I am a direct report of Emmanuel, and I was not a director of him, I was a skip of him, but say I was a direct of him, and I was gunning for a promotion, say I was a director or a senior director under Emmanuel, and I wanted to get promoted. Not only do I need to make sure that Emmanuel's got my back and is supportive of that, but I need to be aware of who else is in that room. And I need to make sure that either with Mary Ellen or Alan or Matt or Donald or Scott or Ian or any of these folks there, that I have either a decent enough relationship with them that they are not saying anything negative about me in the room, or even better yet, that they know me and they understand my work. And when Emmanuel says something positive about me and say, hey, Alan's ready for his promotion, that Debbie chimes in and is like, yeah, Alan was great on this YouTube ad campaign with us, and he went above and beyond, and we would support him. So you want that surround sound support. And importantly, issues that I've had in my past, which I've had to reverse, is you need to quell that dissent. So if you have Ornella in here that says, well, Alan might be ready for promotion, but I saw him speak at this event, and he was very curt with the audience, and I don't think he has the business maturity. Well, that's going to railroad the chance that Emmanuel is going to be able to get me promoted. And I've seen that shit happen. You want to quell that dissent. So you need to understand who is in that room. You need to, it sucks, but you need to understand the politics at play, because that stuff happens at these promotion conversations. So if you're not in the room, you need to understand who is in the room, and you need to understand how to influence those conversations. Oh, and by the way, just an interesting thing, all these folks in Phillips org are white, and most of them are dudes. So anyway, that's just another thing that I go off on, and the lack of diversity at these companies. It's not unique to Google, by the way. It's all companies, unfortunately, or most companies, unfortunately. So you do everything right. You got the support. You got promoted. Congratulations on getting promoted to the job you're already doing. You get some more money, you get some more credibility, you get some more title, and money is the thing that I always focus on. What do you do next? This is what you do next. Update your LinkedIn that you got promoted. So once a promotion is announced, update your LinkedIn profile, make the world aware. You don't need to do a public post, but when you update your LinkedIn post, your title, there is a setting there to notify your network or not notify your network. Let your network be aware. Secondly, update your resume and change the tenses. And what I mean there is your last role should now be in the past tense. Your current role, the action verbs that you use in your resume should be in the present tense. And update your resume so that when people come to you, you have a fresh resume at the ready that you can share with them. And it also shows that progression that you went from director to senior director, or director to VP, or manager to senior manager, or whatever. And then the third thing, which I've advised people to do, is you can coast a little bit internally within the company, because all these companies have a threshold where you will not get promoted 2 cycles in a row. Very rarely will you do that. So because of that, you will also usually get a default rating your next cycle. Congratulate yourself, celebrate, go out with your family, and you can coast a little bit, at least for one promotion cycle, and enjoy the more compensation, the bigger title. And you don't need to bust it right now, because it's going to be another few cycles before you're up for promotion again. So now we'll go to my shameless plug. I'm here partly like through reciprocity. I'm giving you some information, but I also want to share with you a little bit about how I help people to accelerate their careers and how Kadima does. First off, how Kadima helps. We do provide one-on-one coaching to help accelerate your career, to help you think through these decisions of, do I go up within the organization or do I go out? So we do the one-on-one coaching. We do self-paced online learning for folks that want to do it on their own. And when you get a job offer, feel free to reach out to me. I give free second opinions on your job offer. I do not charge you anything unless we can get you at least $10,000 more. So reach out to us when you have a job offer, and we will help you get more money. And 9 times out of 10, we get people more than 10K and as much as 143K more working with us. So that's done with the shameless plug. Now I'm on to Q&A. And on this slide, you'll see 2 things. One, on the left side, if you are interested in accelerating your career now, you are ready to take the next step, you can scan that QR code, apply for our Career Accelerator program. We do look at those applications, and I will get back to you in 48 hours. If you want to learn more about what Kadima does, you can scan the right side of the page and attend my next talk on November 16th. But if you want to do nothing like that, let's answer some questions with my answers. And I will look at my screen now, and I will start picking some questions and trying to answer them or bullshit my way through them. So an anonymous attendee is saying, let me just read the question and I'll rehash it. A new university grad joined our company at a senior position, where those who moved up in the rank took many years to get into the senior role, sometimes not even at a senior role, hence more tenure and experience, but making less money. Feel very undervalued and underpaid. Thoughts on how to navigate this, want to make more money and feel valued. So essentially this question is, someone joined the company potentially at a higher role, moving ahead faster than you. So that happens all the time. As a reminder, there is no tenure. There is no tenure based on promo. So people can come in and move up quickly, and it does behoove you to move around. So this person who came in the organization benefited from coming in at potentially higher compensation and is moving up at a more nimble rate. So my advice to you is to go back to some of the slides that we had previously about how to use that influence, how to build that advocacy, figure out what you can control. And I also advise people about the year of two. So every 2 years, you should be thinking about how do I go up within the organization in terms of promotion or in terms of scope of role, or move over in terms of functional skill or regional diversity. Or if you're not getting either of that, move out and look externally. Getting an external offer sometimes can light the fire under their asses at the company you're at, and they may offer you a counter offer and help you make more money and feel more valued. So that's advice I have for you. Take control. Don't worry about what other people are doing. You can't really control that, but you can look at what other people are doing and learn from that and see, hey, how can I learn how to move ahead quickly and get higher compensation and feel more valued? So that's that question. Let me get the next one. Next up. So someone says they're a user experience design student and will graduate in the spring. They say 29, 23. I think that's a typo, and hopefully you're graduating in 2023. What should I do in the beginning of my career to line things up for a future promotion? Thanks. First thing, kick ass in your job. You need to be solid in your job. Secondly, first off, you're not in the company yet. So a UX design student who's graduating in the spring of 2023, what should she or he do at the beginning of his or her career to line things up for future promotion? Kick ass in the role. First 90 days. First impressions are critical. They call this a primacy effect. It's opposite of the recency effect. So understanding, hit the ground running, get some advocacy, get some support. Then secondarily, understand how the promotion process works at the organization that you're in. And there is a promotion process, especially if it's north of 1,000 employees. Understand, build a relationship with your manager so you get advocacy there. Then understand who your manager peers are, because your manager peers are going to be in that room talking about you and talking about your promotion. So understand who those folks are. Start to build relationships with them. Some of those relationships can turn into mentorship. Some of those mentorships can turn into advocacy. So build that surround sound support and and focus on the impact that you're delivering, but also make sure that you have that support, not just from your manager, but also from others within the organization. So hopefully that helped. Next question. Regardless of performance calibration, my experience is that companies still just pay peanut salary increases. Thoughts? Well, some companies pay peanuts. And when I was at American Express, every year in the annual employee survey, the number one lowest rated item was we get paid fairly and for the work we do, or some semblance of that question. That was always the lowest rated question. At Google, people did not complain about that. At Facebook, people did not complain about that. At Salesforce, not too many people complained about that. So some companies pay a lot more than peanuts. So look around. Don't think that all companies pay peanuts, but also understand that when you get promoted, if you don't get promoted, you are often eligible for a merit-based increase. So you might go up 3% a year. Maybe this year, some companies will give 8% a year because of inflation and all that, which sounds good until you have to pay $4 a gallon for gas. When you move internally within a company, very rarely will you be able to jump as significantly as when you leave that company. Because internally, even when I promoted people at Google or Facebook, I was limited on how much of a cap you could increase that person's compensation at. So they would look at what their current comp is, and they would say, hey, this person will go into this range of salary, but we will not increase their salary north of 15% or north of 20%. However, when I went from American Express to Google, there were no caps on that. And Google had no problem giving me a 37% increase for changing companies. So yes, you will hinder yourself from a compensation increase perspective if you only look internal to your company, because there are limits on how quickly they will move you ahead. And they also look at what your historical compensation is, and they set that growth based on what you've been paid in the previously. When you move to an external company, they are not privy to that information. They are not allowed to request that information. You can share that information. I advise you not to, only if it benefits you. But because of that, you have no caps on what you can increase by leaving. So yes, you might get peanuts internally. You will likely get macadamia nuts externally. So hopefully that answers your question. Next is, I noticed that I got a big salary jump post my MBA. For those who aren't making much money, thoughts about pursuing MBA to get a salary bump and career acceleration. So let me just show my particular situation. I was working in finance. I was working in venture capital. Then I worked in baseball. When I worked in baseball, I was making $20,000 a year. So I wanted to dramatically increase my comp. So I went to business school. So immediately, like when I left business school, I was making about 125K all in. So it looks like a big increase here. It was off of a low bar. MBAs alone will not increase your compensation. In my situation, it did. It allowed me to pivot myself. It allowed me to reinvent myself. It doesn't automatically increase your compensation. Sometimes it benefits you, sometimes it does not. There are other ways that are more efficient in accelerating your career. And lots of that is the growth framework that we talk about, where you identify your goals, you realistically leverage your strengths, you build that outreach of building relationships, you work this system, you get applications in, you get a lot of applications in, and you take a lot of incoming interview opportunities. Then you build up tenacity and you train for those interviews so you're more effective. And then you implement high impact negotiation to earn what you deserve. So those tactics will best accelerate your compensation more than an MBA. My $138,000 MBA from Columbia Business School was well worth it, but I had an opportunity cost of leaving a $20,000 job. And also it was a top 10 business school, which had a lot of brand equity, has a great alumni network. And there were a lot of great companies that recruited on campus, including American Express, including Citibank, including McKinsey, including, well, Google didn't come back then, but now Google comes. So that did benefit me. But MBA on its own does not necessarily lead to that additional compensation. And we're going to actually have a jam session in the future about MBAs, to MBA or not MBA. And on that note, anyone who has topics that they would like us to discuss in future jam sessions, please send them to me. So on the MBA, the question was thoughts about pursuing MBA to get a salary bump and career acceleration. Yes, that's one possibility. I highly recommend only the top 10 or top 20 MBA programs. If you can't get into those, most of them, in my opinion, are not worth their money. Again, that's my opinion. Your opinion may differ. Well, I shouldn't say just the top 20, but generally top 10 or top 20, but it also depends on where you're coming from and what you're looking to get for your MBA. So it's not a plain vanilla answer for everybody. Next question. What are my thoughts on getting a promotion in the same company versus jumping to a different company? Both. Like, you should explore both. You should always be looking, ABL, always be looking outside. Not only will that help to keep your interview skills fresh, it will give you some validation of what your true market value is. And in some cases, if you do get an offer externally and you want to stay at your current company, you can use that internally for leverage to get a boost in title, to get a boost in compensation. But you need to be prepared that the company may just say, you know what, go ahead and leave. So, but I have seen that work for people where they take that external offer and use it for internal leverage. So in the thoughts for getting promotion in the same company versus jumping to a different company, explore both options. There's no downside in that. There's only upside for you. Is there a maximum percent limit for a bump in salary once promoted? Yes, and it differs based on the company. So when I was at American Express, I was making, I think, $115,000 as a senior manager because I negotiated quite well. So when I got promoted to director, the minimum, like they said, the only thing we can do is give you another $10,000 of compensation because you're already getting paid highly. So that limited me. When I was at Google, they also had limits on how much of a increase you can get from getting promoted. So lots of these companies have limits. Google was, I think, 15 to 20%, depending on the level. So yes, there are limits on there. And again, that's why I highly recommend people to always be looking outside, because there are no limits outside. You are a free agent. Did Marty asked, did I do the shameless plug drawing myself? No, I am a horrendous artist, but Google helped me find that on the interwebs. Let's see. How do I manage constant rejection from jobs? I get discouraged after the first one. How do you pick yourself up and keep applying for the same job? Great question. You got to build up some calluses. You got to understand. Let me see if I can bring this slide. Well, actually, I don't think I'll be able to, but in the interview process, at every stage of the interview, the odds are stacked against you for that individual job. When you first submit a resume, you are competing with hundreds, if not thousands of people. When you speak to a recruiter, you're competing with about 20 to 50 people, or probably 20 people. When you speak to the hiring manager next, you're competing with about 5 people. When you get invited to the on-site or the panel or the loops, you are competing with 3 to 5 people. So at each one of those interview processes, the odds are stacked against you. So you need to cast a wide net. You need to be comfortable with rejection. You need to learn from the rejection. You need to build that tenacity. We do help you do that in Kadima. There's other ways that you can work on your mindset there and improve that ability. You need to be comfortable with that. The last time I was in an active job pursuit, I applied to 300 jobs. I got 47 interviews. I got 20 to the final round. I got 5 offers. So if I got 5 offers out of 300 applications, that means I was rejected or ignored 295 times. I just shook it off. It's just the process. Don't take it personally. There were some good jobs that I was perfect for. They lost out on me. There were some job offers that I got that frankly they shouldn't have offered me, and they did. I did not take any of them for different reasons in each of those 5 cases, but you just have to understand how the dynamics are. There is no downside of getting rejected, especially if you learn and grow from each of those individual failures. And there are ways you can learn and grow. You will not get feedback from the company, but there are ways that you can record yourself, you can learn, you can do mock interviews, and you can improve your skills. So my advice is just work on dealing with it. It's easier said than done, but you will get rejected. You have to be accepting of that, and you don't get what you don't try for. Kobe Bryant, if anyone knows Kobe Bryant, one of the best basketball players in the history of the NBA, missed more shots than anybody in the history of the NBA. I think it's 14,481 shots, something like that. It didn't stop him from getting back at the foul line, taking the big shot, winning those 5 NBA championships. So just be comfortable with rejection, be comfortable with failure. It is going to happen. Why did I decide to leave Google? Short answer is, well, let me give you the more subtle answer. I said something out of frustration. I apologized about that. I sincerely apologized about that. They did an investigation on me. They realized that when they asked if I said that, I did say that I said that. And despite the fact that I apologized for it, despite the fact that I won the Google Great Manager Award 6 months earlier, they walked me out for saying something that I said out of frustration to one individual in a private setting and then apologized for. So there's more to it. Happy to go into that at some point. And I will on one of my podcasts at some point. But at this point, I basically said something out of frustration that I shouldn't have said. I apologize for it and it didn't matter. So next question. Jam session topic for MS computer science versus MBA versus nothing. Yes, we will talk about MBA and grad school and MS programs and things like that versus nothing. There's definitely going to be a session probably more on MBAs, but I will also address the specialized master programs in computer science and so forth. Thank you for that tip. For Canadians, companies in Canada tend not to pay as well as the US. And thoughts, maybe better for Canadians to target US-based companies in Canada, like FANG for better comp. So a lot of these global companies pay within the market. So when I had employees that moved from Seattle to Dublin in Ireland, that employee took a very significant cut to his compensation because the cost of living and other factors were dramatically different in Ireland. So I would not think, like, just applying for a company in Canada that's US based doesn't mean you're going to get that compensation. Although if you do apply for companies that have the perspective to pay people well, like the Googles of the world, like the Metas of the world, like Netflix, like Twitter. Twitter's a little bit in flux with Elon, like Netflix, like ServiceNow. There's a whole list of companies that pay well. Those companies generally pay well in every market where they operate, and they pay well in comparison to those markets. So they will probably pay, Google generally try to pay at the 90th percentile within markets. So they're probably paying at the 90th percentile within Waterloo, where they have operations, and within Vancouver, where they have operations, in Montreal. And then you can relocate. So you can get a job in Canada, then you can relocate to a place in the US or other places, and the company will relocate you. And you might increase your compensation significantly, but the cost of living, if you move to New York or the Bay Area, will be dramatically different than living outside of Toronto or wherever you are in Canada. So I would still focus on the company, and companies generally pay well within the market. But when I've had employees go from Mountain View, the Bay Area, to Austin, Texas, they took a significant cut. When I had employees go from Australia to New York City, I had employees take a significant increase in comp, but it's all in line with the cost of living as well. What do you do to get promoted or grow in your role when you don't have your manager's support? It's pretty much impossible, unless you can get your manager's support and get that support. But if you don't have your manager's support, you don't have superior support, there is virtually almost no way of getting promoted, because you need that manager talking in your behalf in that meeting. And if that manager is not talking on your behalf in that meeting, it's going to be really hard to get promoted. So the best way to get promoted then is to move off the team. With the current economic environment where there's lots of layoff news, especially in tech, what do you think about people in traditional industries that don't pay very well pivoting into tech for more money? What's the risk of the layoff instability versus reward of more comp? So if you are at a more traditional company, I don't know what company you're at, say a consumer packaged good company like Unilever or Procter & Gamble, or say a financial services company like Visa or Fidelity. Those companies are all dealing with economic realities as well. So your job is just as much risk there as it is at a big tech company. The benefit of working in the big tech companies is they work with real fat margins, real fat profit margins, which they invest in compensation, and they are more hesitant to lay off people. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but I would not tell yourself that I should not look outside because staying at my current situation is going to give me safety and stability, because that's bullshit. I've seen people get laid off with RIFs, reduction in force. I've seen people get laid off that have been in their company for 18, 20 years. Hell, my dad got laid off from his company after 34 years. He thought he was very stable there. They decided that his role was redundant, and after 34 years, they gave him a nice severance package of a year, but it didn't stop him from getting laid off. So he had no protection there. So tenure at a company is very minimally beneficial for you to have job stability. So I would look more at companies that are doing well. And the tech companies, even though they are hurting now from a growth perspective, they are still immensely profitable. They still have hundreds of thousands of jobs open. Right now, today, Google has 2,500 jobs open. Last I checked Facebook earlier this week, they had about 600 jobs opening. And you hear all this press coverage of, oh, job freeze and cutbacks and layoffs. Yes, that shit is happening, but the companies are still hiring and there's still jobs open there. And I would still advise any friend or family that you're better off working at a Netflix or a Salesforce or a Okta than you are at a Coca-Cola or at a General Electric, or companies that are slower growth and lower profit. So that's my perspective there. I hear product manager is a very hot role in tech that tons of people are targeting. Some top tech CEOs came through that route. What are your thoughts on the product manager and program manager role in tech, especially for someone who doesn't have a CS background or MBA? First off, product management, program management, extremely different. I know they sound similar. They have lots of the same letters, very different. Product manager in tech is also very different than a product manager in consumer packaged goods or financial services or other companies. Product managers at most tech companies, like at a Google or a Facebook, at Amazon for the technical product managers, do you need to have more technical skills? Do you often need to have in the case of Google, need to have CS, computer science degrees. Just because you see some people going that route to become CEO, I would look at other people that have become CEOs and have never been a product manager. I'm trying to, anyway, like, first off, if your goal is to become CEO of Google or Facebook or Meta, Meta's Facebook or Twitter or whatever, I think, like, I don't know if Elon Musk has ever been a product manager, but he became CEO there a very different way of Twitter. I would not chase an area because you think that is a path to get you there. What I generally advise people to do is leverage your strength. So if your strength is sales, don't try to go into product just because you think that's a path to success, because frankly, it's not. You can do tons of great work as sales, in customer success, in finance, in HR, in operations, whatever. Play to your strength. Don't try to reinvent yourself, because from the hiring manager's perspective, they're not going to give a shit what you want to do. They're going to give a shit of what you have done. So that's how I would answer that. Another question. Thinking of stability. There's a perception that public sector government is stable, but doesn't pay as well as tech. Thoughts? Yeah, that's true. So if you want stability, you can probably work a government job and you can probably earn a pension after you spend 10 or 20 years there. And yeah, if that's what you want, you can do that. I think the downside of slow growth and bureaucracy and lower pay is not worth it. But if that's what you want, there are government jobs that you can take, and you can look for jobs that are stable, like a Starbucks barista. I'm not like downgrading like that or anything, but people will continue to get coffee. People will continue to use a government. So there is some more stability there. But then you have the instability sometimes of the government of not having budget approval and then people getting furloughed. So I don't generally advise people to go for government jobs. It's too slow moving, too low pay, and it's less of a meritocracy. That's more of a tenureship. So if you just want to check in and check out and move up 3% a year, 5% a year, government job might be a good fit for you. There's a person of color in tech. What should I do to navigate biases and discrimination at the workplace that might hinder my career development? There are lots of biases and discrimination. The biggest biases are in the consideration stage of the interview process. So one thing I would do is join my talk. I'm giving a talk at Blacks in Tech. We're offering 6 scholarships to members of Blacks in Tech. It's a free organization to join. It's a great organization. You can go to kademacareers.com/BITCON, I believe is our URL. Alyssa, if you know what the URL is, if you can put it in here. But reach out to me. I do give lots of talks on about the systemic biases that exist in recruiting and how to overcome those. But once you get in front of the right decision maker, there's actually lots of advantages, because these companies are talking a big game about they want to hire more Black, they want to hire more Latinx, they want to hire more women. They're doing a piss poor job at it. But if you make it easy for them and you show up on their doorstep in front of the right decision maker and you are prepared, then there's a lot better shot for you to succeed there. What do I think about working at big tech versus startup? Highly, highly, highly recommend big tech. They pay more, they treat you better, they have better benefits, they pay in restricted stock units. So if the stock goes down by 40%, you still own 60% of that value, versus a startup where you will work harder, you will work with less consistently quality people. You will get paid in options, which could crap out in 2/3 of the cases. They often will not turn into any value for you. And it has less brand equity on your resume. So that's my general stance. There's sometimes when I recommend startups for people, but from this anonymous attendee in terms of startup versus big tech, and I wrote a blog about this as well. Big tech, established companies pay you better, treat you better, have better brand equity, and will accelerate your career further. But depending on the stage of your career, sometimes it does make sense to go the startup route. But in general, big tech is the way to go. What do I think about targeting entrepreneurship versus a job? higher risk, and I would learn on a company's dime first. I've learned tons of shit from my time at Google, from my time at Facebook, from my time at Salesforce, from my time at American Express. They paid me well. They treated me well. I learned what good looks like. I also learned what some shitty stuff looked like, and it mitigated my risk. Right now, as an entrepreneur, I lost $9,000 last month. I never lost $9,000 when I was working for any of those companies. They were always paying me. So I would focus on, like, I highly recommend the job, higher degree of success, higher learning, and it also has enabled me to catapult my my business as well because of those connections I've made. How am I finding my entrepreneurship versus working in jobs? So similar question. I love the fact that I'm not dealing with bullshit, politics, or bureaucracy. I don't love the fact that I don't know my compensation every month and that I'm working harder than ever, which I actually am cool doing. And I'm making less than ever right now. But I am building something. I am excited about this, and we are delivering real results to real people. So we are a little bit over. If you are interested in accelerating your career, I highly recommend, if you're ready now, sign up for kademacareers.com/KCAP-info, and you can apply for our career accelerator. Just a heads up that is our highest price program. We do have other offerings. And if you just want to learn more about what Kadima does, sign up for kademacareers.com/guarantee. And the reason why we call it guarantee is we are the only career accelerator out there that guarantees that we will get you a great job in 6 months or less, or you can ask for your money back, or you can work with us indefinitely until you get that great job. So with that, 3 minutes over. Appreciate your time. Feel free to reach out to me, and we will be sending the replay out. And yeah, don't forget, you own your career. We help accelerate it. Thanks a lot. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. Bye-bye.